Jump off that exhausting hamster wheel and into balanced living with Dr. Marissa.
Promise you joy in the mystery.
Dr. Marissa, also known as the Asian Oprah. Her mission, to be a beneficial presence on the planet. Her purpose, to be your personal advocate to live, laugh, love, learn. Her life motto, don't die wondering. Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And welcome. You are tuned in to my weekly talk radio show called Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa every Tuesday at naturally high noon. Broadcasting live out of the Sunset Gower studio with UBN Radio TV, Universal Broadcasting Network, and then syndicated every Thursday at 7, Saturday at 1 on my CNBC, NBC News radio channel, KCAA, AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5, and syndicated everywhere that iHeartRadio is. And this is a show about hope and happiness. So there's no gossip, no scandal, and no K-words, no Kardashian talk at all, and no T-words either, if you get my drift. Because we want you to focus on your own reality show and how you can be happy 88% of the time. And so, if you've missed any of my interviews with fabulous guests like New York Times best-selling author Neil Donald Walsh, Marianne Williamson, to Marianne from Gilligan's Island, Don Wells, Potsy from Happy Days, Anson Williams, Fran Drescher, Corey Feldman, Stand By Me, Gremlins, and Goonies, and Muhammad Ali's daughter, Layla Ali. Those are just a few of the very many guests that have been on this show. And if you actually go to my YouTube channel and hit free subscribe, you'll be able to listen and watch all of those past interviews that I've had coming up on what is 300 consecutive weeks on the air. Unbelievable. Splattering. And I'm just really, really grateful for that. And also, great news, my syndicated CNBC radio news channel that has Dave Ramsey and Stephanie Miller show has gotten a lot of positive feedback from my Give Yourself a Break with Dr. Marissa 90-second spots. So they're kind of like the Osgood file minute, if you understand those. So they're asking for more. So if you have any product or service that you would like the Asian Oprah to endorse and put on top of those Give Yourself Breaks, which are a life-affirming 90-second thoughts or good BS to get rid of the bad BS, then please do contact me for very, very affordable rates. Also, today's no difference. I'm having someone here who is all about hope and happiness. He's a guest. He's a friend of mine who I met through my Agape affiliation. My big brother, Michael, is actually just dubbed his location up in San Francisco as one of our Agape satellites. He's all about, he's a spiritual author, inspirational speaker, addiction counselor, and awakening coach who's helped countless people through his simple yet powerful teachings. He is the author of the best-selling book, Conscious Being, Awakening to Your True Nature. His groundbreaking new book, Conscious Recovery, A Fresh Perspective on Addiction, was released worldwide on January 8th of this year. So I wanted to bring him on. We've had a lot of talk about addiction. We've had a lot of talk about, opioids. Even the T guy did that. And so there's a consciousness now, and I thought it was time to bring someone who has a solution. So if you're addicted or you know of someone who's addicted, make sure you tune them in right now so we can heal together. So, without further ado, please welcome to my studio, TJ Woodward.
Yay.
Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Marissa. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be anywhere. I'm just so grateful to be alive and thriving.
Yes.
Delighted to be here with you.
That is true. And then the power of gratitude just amplifies the good feeling of being alive and in our skin and comfortable in our skin. But we do know that addiction is, I think for me, the simplest version is we're not comfortable in our skin, and so we look for things to fill ourselves up, the limitless size hole with transient things to try to make us feel comfortable, but they fail. And then we use more and more, and it gets worse and worse. So that's my definition of addiction. Please give me yours.
Well, I mean, I think that's exactly right. That's exactly how I frame it. You know, a broad definition of addiction is simply a place within ourselves that feels separate from, feels broken, feels isolated, feels abandoned in some way. And then we're looking outside of ourselves to try to fix something that feels broken within. And as we're going to discuss today, what we know is we're not broken within, but we believe we are. You know, we get programmed to believe that we are lacking in some way. So it's like we have our umbilical cord in our hand trying to plug into something or someone to try to fix that.
Interesting. I like that analogy. Now, BS being a belief system, a core belief system that is broken. So let's start with some statistics. I wanted to get the latest and greatest, or not so great, statistic on where we are in terms of addiction.
Well, you know, it's fascinating when we talk about statistics, because what I know is there are far more people that we could classify as addicted than even what the statistics will tell us, because what we know is we don't call it an addiction until it starts causing problems. Before that, we just call it fun, right? So
Good point.
Yeah, so what the statistics say is there's 21.5 million Americans right now that are addicted, and of those 21 million, primarily alcohol, but 7 million people are addicted to some type of drug. We know the opioid addiction rates are really getting higher and higher and higher. And, you know, I know you and I are going to talk about the cause of that, the spiritual cause of that. Yeah,
absolutely. So that's a lot of millions, and it is an epidemic. And there are treatments, and I actually, you know, who would have thought we would have commercials advertising, you know, do you have an addiction? But it certainly is. It's a business, for better, for worse. And I've seen people try to get well, and they go to treatment centers or whatever it is, and you know, a lot of them, some of them are drug-based or whatever. And you picked up on something that really, I think Alcoholics Anonymous talks about that. So I think I would credit a lot of the success because it is a spiritual angle. Now, I know some of you are going to go, oh, man, she's going to talk about the G word. She's going to drop the G bomb. And I'm telling you that if you have tried other ways of kicking an addiction and you have not been successful, then there's nothing worse than contempt before investigation. So I'm going to ask you to just stay with us as we talk about maybe the primary disconnect in why addiction continues to thrive when we're using science or medicine without that spiritual component. So if you've just tuned in and want to know who I'm talking about the spiritual side of addiction with, it is TJ Woodward. He's flown down from San Francisco, and he's here to share his methodology and his wisdom and his understanding and his work. So, okay, so now that I set you up, tell me what is underlying.
Well, thank you. And this is really, I love that you're getting to the root of the conversation. I've worked in the addiction treatment field for over a decade, and I've been doing spiritual care at top-tier, high-end treatment programs. And what I noticed right out of the gate is that a lot of the treatment modalities were focusing on symptoms and behaviors without really getting down to some of the deeper root causes. You know, with my New Thought background, my background in New Thought for over 30 years and my own recovery for over 30 years, I recognize there's a spiritual root cause or root causes to addictive behavior. And I want to begin by saying I started with a profound question. And that question was, what would happen if I were to witness any person that is struggling with addiction or coming out of addiction as essentially whole and perfect rather than broken in some way, to see what happens? You know, you and I am sure, I mean, I know life is a great experiment. And what I mean by that is the observer has a profound effect.
Yeah.
So it started with that simple commitment to myself. I'm going to view every person I sit with through that lens of wholeness. And then we can talk about what I've, sort of what I've come up with as the 3 root causes of addictive behavior through this spiritual lens. But that's fundamental to the conscious recovery method and conscious recovery.
You're not seeing someone as less than broken, something's wrong with them. That's key. That I have not heard that before, but I like that because you see what you believe and you believe what you see.
Absolutely.
So we're adding as seeing people as broken, seeing people as needing help even.
Yes, absolutely.
Is and can be part of the problem. That's I've gotten that out of the Law of Attraction, Abraham Hicks teachings.
Well, and our wonderful friend Dr. Michael Beckwith says we're not here to save the world, we're here to serve the new paradigm. So I've been sitting with what is this new paradigm that I'm part of, ushering in the treatment field, in the addiction treatment field, and the recovery movement, and that is a profound shift, and that shift is what we've just been talking about.
Right.
In my own story, and I think this is fundamental, and I want to share for just a moment.
Please, I was going to ask you that anyways.
Yeah, of course. I came into this world very, very happy. My mother consistently says to me I was the happiest baby she had ever seen, the happiest toddler. Something happened around age 7, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember a sensation of closing off, as if there was a wall being built around my heart.
Why?
Now, I know as a 7-year-old, I didn't have the conscious understanding of what was happening. What I know in retrospect is that I was separating from that essential self, which isn't, we know, true. I was really building a barrier.
A disconnect. You were allowing a disconnect. And let me just interject for a second, because a couple of jigsaw pieces came together. I do college or school, high school, elementary school, career day. I for 15 years or 19 years, my daughters, all through school. And I noticed that before 10, and you're saying almost like 7, maybe I'll bring the number back. When I ask kids, do they have a voice inside them that tells them they're not good enough or unworthy or not beautiful or fat and ugly? Before 10 in my sort of counting, I saw very few, if any. But somewhere around 10 and maybe 7 to 10, the hands started going up, like every hand. So something happens, and it may be not even related to anything traumatic in your childhood, even though 7 out of 10 of us have trauma in our childhood, happens to birth that disconnect.
Yeah, and this, I love that we're moving here, because this is exactly what I'm talking about in conscious recovery. That what I've noticed is people with addictive behavior, the 3 root causes are unresolved trauma, which I want to talk a little bit more about.
Please.
Spiritual disconnection. I'm not talking about a disconnection from that G word, because that's part of it, but it's really a disconnection from the essential self. Children come in with an innate sense of who and what they are. They're present. All those things we're looking for in meditation, children do naturally under the age of 5, right? They're present. They're totally in touch with their emotions. They'll let you know exactly what they're feeling.
Right.
And then the third one is toxic shame, which you're talking about, that belief that there's something broken here.
Right.
I am not.
Interesting.
Core false beliefs are what drive addictive behavior, because if I believe I'm not good enough, if I believe I'm broken, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, then eventually I'm going to need some kind of relief from that. We find something outside of ourselves that brings temporary relief, and then we can get addicted to it, believing that's the relief.
Solution.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Alcohol is one of those addictions where you take that first sip and you feel the and I've heard many people say it's the point where I felt okay. Yes. And it was but that one, the feeling doesn't last, and then 2, it leads to a compulsion to not be able to stop, and then there's consequences.
Absolutely.
So that totally makes sense. So anything that temporarily takes away that feeling of not being good enough or not broken is going to be addictive. Right.
We can get addicted to it. Right now, it's mysterious, I think, with who of us get actually what we would call addicted. But what we know is, what I know in my own life and in working with clients for these many years, is that when we're grabbing something outside of ourselves, as you said, it's only temporary. And eventually, what helped us to feel more connected, or that You know, when I was 13 and I first drank alcohol, I remember for the first time in those 7 or 8 years finally feeling relaxed and okay in my own skin again. The issue, of course, I mean, let's break it down. The issue is it didn't keep working that way.
Right. And
Otherwise,
you need more and more
Right.
to get that feeling, and then you're chasing the feeling, and then it goes away.
more disconnected,
Yes.
more shame,
Yes.
more trauma.
Yeah, I had a doctor on a few weeks back who said something I didn't know, a new finding that opiates, instead of taking away pain where you need more and more, are now linked to causing the pain. So you could actually give yourself pain by taking opiates.
Yeah.
So it not just goes away, it backfires.
Absolutely.
So I think addiction and addictive substances work the same way.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and we know that anything outside of ourselves is only going to bring a momentary or a temporary sense of relief. That the deeper work is for us to work on the unresolved trauma, the shame, the disconnection,
Right.
reconnecting with our essential self, working
Right.
through the trauma, and then addressing the shame.
Yeah, and that's for one of the root causes. I want to just take an ID. If you've just tuned in and you're wondering who we're talking addiction and solutions to addiction about, you are tuned in to Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa. And it's a show about hope and happiness. And so we're here with TJ Woodward, who is the author of his new book, Conscious Recovery, A Fresh Perspective on Addiction. And we're talking about 3 major root causes. So we've got trauma, which 7 out of 10 of us have, and then the disconnect, right, that happens where we don't feel good enough, which may or may not be related to trauma, right?
Right.
And then the third one is
Toxic shame.
toxic shame. Let's talk
Yeah.
about that one.
Okay, toxic shame. And I want to touch a little bit on unresolved trauma before we move into that. I kind of put those in order because the trauma, you know, Don Miguel Ruiz, our friend Don Miguel
Yes.
Ruiz, who we love, he coined a term, or at least it's the first time I heard it. He calls it the domestication of the human. And what we know when we domesticate an animal, we call it breaking them or breaking their spirit. I had a profound experience not long ago. I was watching a parade. It was an athletic parade, so I don't know what it was actually.
Okay.
But there was a young boy about probably 3 or 4 years old holding his dad's hand, and a float came by, and the boy just went into ecstasy, jumping up and down, really excited.
Yeah.
And the father looked down at him and said, "Do not cheer for them. That's not our team." That kind of trauma goes unnoticed because spiritual trauma is we come into this world knowing that I am whole and perfect. And then we get taught, we get programmed, Michael,
Well-meaning parents.
sometimes well-meaning, often unconscious,
right.
often unconscious.
Yeah.
And we're just, reprogramming each other from our unconscious belief systems, that BS. And then what is needed then, or what develops, let's go that direction.
Okay.
What develops is the toxic shame. Because of that, something feels wrong with the world, but then as a small child, we don't have the cognitive ability to understand maybe it's mom that has some issues, maybe it's dad that has the issues.
Right. We internalize
Right.
or take it on ourselves.
There's something wrong with me.
That's what toxic shame is. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I'd be surprised if not every one of us listening right now was going, so that's where that comes from. So now that we know, and I'm guessing that you don't really care so much about which bucket we fall into, but knowing that there's a solution.
Correct. Thank you. Yeah, we always want to move into the solution.
Yes, we do, because it's analysis paralysis, and I don't want you to spend the rest of your life, well, I don't know if I'm that bucket or this bucket. It doesn't really matter. You're in one of the 3 buckets. My guess is, unless you are Mother Teresa or the Dalai Lama at this point, if you're human, you can relate to one of those 3.
Yeah,
And the
absolutely.
good news is there's nothing terminally wrong with us. Let me take a breath on that one. There's nothing terminally wrong with you. And I'm going to look over at my beautiful friend here, who's running my boards, who is also the owner of UBN Radio, Tony Sweet. Are you resonating with this? Is this show exactly, because we talk about this, and neither one of us look like we think there's anything wrong with us. Trust me. I mean, I used to say, if I could feel about myself half as good as what people say they see, if I could respect myself half as much as people respect me, I'd be okay. And so if you're at all identifying with this, and this is where I was almost 9 years ago, and he called me on it before the show started. I said, we're not talking me out of my addiction to joy, because I want to keep that one. Excuse me. And he said, but I don't think you've always felt that way. And he's absolutely right. And for me, it was 9 years ago where I came face to face with, I am not broken. There's nothing wrong with me. I am perfect, whole, and complete. And I have some BS that I need to move out of the way so that I can live in that way. And that comes directly from my big brother, who I found, almost 9 years ago, before I found another happy, joyous, and free way of living.
Yes.
So I'm trying to, with our, you know what I'm talking about,
Yes.
number 7. So, radio press and all of that. So, but I do know what you're talking about. Tradition is what I'm grabbing for. But I know what you're talking about. I know that people that are listening and watching this either live or later know that. So what are then the steps?
So excited to be in this conversation. So my book is in 3 parts. The root causes of addiction, which we've just discussed. The next section is breaking the cycle of addiction. And then the third one is a return to wholeness, or the great remembering, I call it. So breaking the cycle of addiction. The first step is creating safety. This is internal and external safety. This is where we find community like Agape. We find community in some kind of support group.
AA or whatever.
Whether it's a 12-step program, refuge recovery now, the Buddhist approach to addiction is amazing.
Heard about that.
Yeah, and so we create internal and external safety so that we can begin to move into the steps that we need to take in order to unlearn. So the second chapter in that middle section of the book is called Unlearning. And that really is looking at all the programming, all the beliefs, the content of our mind, those belief systems that need to be addressed and unlearned. And I want to say something for a moment about conscious and unconscious, because you touched on it so beautifully. Yeah, of course. If I'm walking around with a belief that I'm not lovable, most likely in the outer realm, I'm going to try to grab more. I'm going to try to grab love. Please love me, please love me, please love me. Right? If I feel that I'm unworthy, I might be an overachiever in the world. But
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, I knew that maybe based on what you were saying, right? The world starts to see us in a different way than we see ourselves.
Yes.
But what we know, what you and I know for sure, is the feeling tone that we're holding is what creates reality. So if I'm walking around looking fabulous.
Love in the wrong places.
Well, looking for love in the wrong places,
but
or
looking fabulous on the outside,
overachieving, but I feel I'm not worthy. That vibration is what creates life.
Yeah.
That's why we see people that look really successful and then suddenly they sabotage in some way.
Right.
This is why the law of attraction works to a certain degree, and then there's a deeper. This is what I love about Reverend Michael Beckwith. When in The Secret, he's the one that was taking it deeper in the conversation.
Yeah, it's not about money and cars.
Right. And it's not just about thoughts. It's about that felt sense, that feeling tone that we're holding.
Yeah. And so the good news is if you're conscious about it, you can surface it to correct it. If you're unconscious about it, and I want to do a brief commercial for you and me and any person who does coaching, is they can help with that understanding or the seeing of that, because there's a lot of people that I work with, executive coaching, who they say, I am not angry. And that's unconscious awareness, or no awareness, or denial, or really deep denial, because they don't see it. So I would challenge you, if you don't think that you are feeling lack and limitation, or you're feeling unworthy, to ask the people around you for some feedback and some honest, do I come across as needy, or do I come across as I'm feeling like a piece of shiitake, which is my expression, because as I was saying, I would look really good and I'd say thank you when I got a compliment. And then I would go inside in this really horribly ugly, dark place and go, I'm a piece of shiitake. I'm a piece of shiitake. And then I would look around and go, oh, I'm better than you. I'm hot shiitake and I am better than you. And then I'd go, oh, that's not true. And I'm a piece of, so if you identify with that, I think that's one of the three, right?
Absolutely.
That's actually, it's almost a combo.
It really is.
Of the three: toxic shame, trauma, and the disconnect.
Yeah, and what what you're talking about, of course, is so perfectly in alignment with where the book moves next, and that is, what are the spiritual principles that we practice in order to start breaking the cycle of needing something outside of ourselves? And one of the practices that I use that has been absolutely life-changing is called living in the question. I certainly didn't coin that. Other people are saying that. What are the questions I'm asking myself? How can I begin to dialogue with that part of myself that feels broken? Open-ended questions, meaning no yes or no questions. And I invite that people don't start with why, because why is that
not a spiritual question.
Thank you. Why is not a spiritual question. So it could be like, what within me is wanting to awaken? It could be, how else might I see this? What is wanting to emerge here? You know, when our world is falling apart, we could say, oh no, this is terrible. How does this keep happening to me? Disempowering questions.
Right.
An empowering question is, ooh, it's all falling apart, seemingly. What wants to emerge? How does it get even better than this? What else is possible here?
Beautiful. I use Edwene Gaines. I can't wait to see what good comes out of this. A little bit of sarcasm, because that's a service I offer. But I do like the way yours were much more positive in the wording, in the way of saying it. But I love that, because it's not condemning yourself.
Absolutely not.
Because why does this keep happening to me condemns yourself. It continues the bringing about of, bad things happen. Why do bad things happen to good people? Well, if I keep asking that question, I'm focused on the bad things that are going to happen to good people.
Absolutely. And when we ask, why does this keep happening to me, we're concretizing victim consciousness, right? And I talk about this in Conscious Recovery because and I want to be really clear for all the viewers and listeners, when we, for example, if we're sexually abused or physically abused as a child, we are victims of that. The issue, though, is that we sometimes take on an identity as a victim. In other words, I start to feel like the world is against me. And if I have that framework, I'm going to continue to replicate that. So why does this keep happening to me? Concretizes victim consciousness. The more empowering questions start opening us up to greater possibilities. We know in the quantum field, all things are possible in this moment. And what it takes is for me, all it takes is for me to unlearn every idea I've ever had about myself in the world, and then I can be free. And we do that a bit at a time, right? So mindfulness.
You can't go from I'm a piece of shiitake to I'm hot shit. The place to land is I'm pretty good shiitake. So,
or maybe it's not true.
I'm not?
Yeah.
Maybe. I'm not pretty good shiitake?
To start even saying, maybe it's not true that I'm a piece of shiitake.
Yes.
Where did I get this idea? When did I first start believing this? These are questions that start opening us up to like, oh my gosh, I've been believing a lie this whole time.
Right.
It's not even true.
It's not even true. I'm not perfect. I do mess up once in a while, but that does not mean that what my mother said about you're never going to make it is true. That was her interpretation, not mine. And I don't need to carry around that lie anymore.
Correct. Return to sender in the most loving way. Because our tall people in our lives usually are simply unconscious. You know, how many times do we hear someone say, I need to teach you the ways of the world? I mean, I remember growing up, recognizing at age 7, 8, 9, I wasn't quite like all the other boys around me. And then what does it mean to be a man? And I had all these influences that were really damaging to my spirit.
Yeah.
You know, I came here to be who I am. We all come here to be our own unique expressions of this one power, whether we call that the G word or any other word.
Yes.
We're source energy. We're expression. So, you know.
So it's not religion. Let's just put the moose on the table.
Not even close.
I'm from Canada. So it's instead of elephant in the room, it's moose on the table. So moose on the table it's really not about religion.
Not at all.
Because religion is, I love the expression, for those of us who want to religion is for people who want to avoid going to hell. Spirituality is for those of us who have already been there.
Correct.
And we're talking about a fundamental BS belief system that somehow we need to find and ask and accept into our hearts something that is outside of us. That's religion. Now, if you can use that to get to a core relationship with the you that is the eternal being, great. But if you were like me, I grew up fundamental Baptist, which is like a precursor to agnosticism for me, or atheism. I didn't want anything to do with God. I didn't want to even say the word God. It made me very uncomfortable. But what I've learned and unlearned is, because we are all God expressing through us, or we are part or the hologram of this energy power source that some people call God, some people call Buddha, some people call Krishna, whatever it is, that because we are a part of that, we've never been separate. Then the conscious recovery is coming home.
Absolutely.
To that union. So we don't need a substance or a person or a religion to return to who we really are.
Right, and that's the third section of my book, a return to wholeness, a return back to that place that we essentially are, that we came in as. It has nothing to do with religion. And what's great about that is, if someone's religious, this will work for them. If someone's not, this will work for them. Because we're talking about something different than that.
Yes.
We're talking about reconnecting. You know, Rumi says we're not a drop in the ocean, we're the entire ocean in a drop. When we really get that, I am God, you are God, we all are. Whatever word we use, source energy, the Tao, the Buddha nature, whatever word we use, that essential
whatever
self,
works. Yeah.
it is the deepest truth of who each of us are.
Absolutely. I call him my UPS man, my universal power source. I plug into him every morning and I pray. Well, I don't plug into him because I'm not separate, but I'm conscious about the connection when I pray and meditate. And I'm getting the signal that it is time to thank our sponsors for making this show happen. And if you would like to be connected in terms of supporting the show about hope and happiness, please do contact me. Very affordable rates, and I want to promote everyone who's doing beautiful work on the planet. All right, and here we go. We'll be back in 2 and 2. Peace in and peace out. Are you ready to break the cycle of your addictive behavior? Have you tried other methods but still feel stuck? Patches, hypnosis, therapy to no avail? Well, TJ Woodward is ready to help you with conscious recovery, helping you recognize core false beliefs that are keeping you from a pathway of life filled with love and connection. Contact TJ at www.tjwoodward.com to free yourself today. Yay! And if you've just tuned in, you know that this is Take My Advice, I'm Not Using It. Get Balance with Dr. Marissa every Tuesday at naturally high noon out of the Sunset Gower studio at UBN Radio TV, Universal Broadcasting Network. And if you're listening on Thursday or Saturday, you're listening to my syndicated CNBC, NBC News Radio channel, KCAA, AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5, and syndicated everywhere on iHeartRadio. And a peace in and peace out to all my listeners and all the people who have recently subscribed to my YouTube channel. I just want to put a shout out to you. Thank you so much. YouTube, I'm appealing to you right now. YouTube has changed their little standards and agreements, so I'm not going to be a partner unless all of you who do listen enough minutes and who do view over 110,000, I'm appreciative, you have to free subscribe. So please do that. And today I am so blessed to have someone who has a beautiful answer to a problem that is plaguing over 25 million Americans today, which is addiction. And it is, for me, just looking for something to make you feel good about yourself. You don't have to look anymore. There is a solution. And my guest is TJ Woodward. Thank you so much for coming. This is his book, And if you didn't hear the whole premise and the foundation, go back and listen to this when it's available on YouTube, the show. But in the meantime, this is your newest book. It just came out last month, and you want to share it with the world to know that there is a solution. Where can they get it?
They can, best place is Amazon.
Okay.
You can also go to tjwoodward.com, and then there'll be a link there. This is, I wanted to say one thing about this book. It is intended to enhance any other work that you're doing, not instead of.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So if you're part of a recovery group, if you're in great therapy, if you're in treatment, the intention of conscious recovery is to add to that, to deepen. If you're someone that's been sober for a decade and you're saying, now what?
Yes.
That deeper call, that call to like, I've done my work in recovery, and now I want a deeper experience. Conscious Recovery is the book for you.
Beautiful. And it's also the book for those who've tried other kinds of treatment and it has not worked. I call it emotional sobriety. I think that physical sobriety is beautiful and wonderful, and I don't want to tick anyone off. I think it's absolutely essential. If you are an alcoholic, you have to have a physical sobriety before you can have anything. And then what I do notice is that people who are physically sober but don't have that spiritual connection, they've kind of, they're still white-knuckling. They're still wanting in any substance, whether it's the gambling or the shopping or the eating or the drugs, pharmaceutical or otherwise. There is this deep connection that if we cannot find or allow or discover or rediscover, then it's a Band-Aid. I really believe. So that's why I did want us to have TJ on to really anchor the truth that you are loving, lovable, and loved, that you are wrapped in a warm blanket of worthiness, that every single one of you have a unique talent, gift, and ability, and every one of you deserves to feel a part of and worthy and loved.
Absolutely.
So
Beautifully
sorry about
said.
that.
No, that was perfect.
You got me going.
That was perfect, because once we reach, once we've unlearned, once we've created a safe space to unlearn and practice some of our spiritual principles like mindfulness, like living in the question, where does this lead us? Well, it leads us to a life that we were born to live, this life of dynamic connection, this life of joy. We can change our addiction to joy. That one I think we all agree is awesome.
Yes.
But we can start to live the life that is the most deeply connected with the source energy that we are. This is a place we move beyond right and wrong and good and bad, and we move into a place of awe and wonder. And that's, I think, what we're all longing for. We're all longing for love and connection. The issue is just we've lost that internally, so we're trying to plug in externally. The greatest paradox, of course, is when we reconnect or return to that place of wholeness, we start to have love and connection all around us. I know you and I have experienced that in our lives. It's like I wanted something outside of me to fix me, overachieving, doing all of that. And when I really got reconnected with my essential self, all of a sudden the outside world started matching that.
Yes. Things, look at my life in the last 9 years. It's been amazing. So let me do one. We have time. I did have someone message me and with a scenario, and it's similar actually to a caller I had as well. So the addiction is food, and they know that they shouldn't be eating. My advice to one of my callers was every time they reach for food to have sex instead. But that could lead to another addiction. So what would you – so they wake up and they say to themselves, okay, today I'm going to be good. Today I'm not going to – and you can substitute cigarettes or alcohol or anything to this. And I can't help myself. I just have to have it. And there's no way out of it. So I just came to you, and this is the presenting problem. What would you say to me?
Well, I want to start by saying that I recognize, as an Indian proverb says, we're a house with 4 rooms: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. Most likely there's something happening in all 4 of the rooms. So recovery is going to also be in all 4 of those rooms. So especially with food, we need to make sure
That's
we're okay
good.
physically too.
Right.
My approach is through that spiritual room. Obviously, we're not really divided into 4 sections. And we recognize that most of us have a tendency to hang out in one room more than the other 3, or maybe 2 rooms. Spiritually speaking, if someone has a food issue, the tricky part is we can't stop eating.
Right.
Right. You know, like certain
Days
addictions.
without food. Mhm.
Right. And so then we're just going to switch that. So
Right.
we want to make sure we're well physically. So please, see your doctor. That's really important with food. The craving is something that we can address spiritually. What am I really longing for? I love that you opened with the line that most of us say, I'm going to be good today.
Yeah.
We want to move away from good and bad and right and wrong and into, is this really bringing me closer to who and what I want to be? Is this really bringing me closer?
Different question.
Very different question.
Yeah.
What am I really getting from this? And
I'm getting a Krispy Kreme donut is what I'm getting from this. Sorry.
and some relief from something, right? Some
Yeah.
relief and a
Yeah.
temporary high.
Yeah.
I've reframed a few things in the addiction world. There's certain terms that I've reframed. One of them is coping mechanisms. I call
Okay.
them brilliant strategies. And I'll tell you why. They're really brilliant at the time. And when I say, look how brilliant I was to find these strategies like the Krispy Kreme. And if it's one Krispy Kreme, it's not really an issue. But the problem is I'm finding myself eating 6. Right. So
How'd you know? No, I'm kidding.
Right. So if we're saying it's a brilliant strategy, then we can say, is it still working? Is it still serving me? Who and what do I really want to be? We're going to go through the process. It's not an instant fix, right? Once that craving happens and that donut, we're doing the deeper. You and I are talking about the deeper work.
Right.
What needs to be unlearned, mindfulness, practicing this process of living in the question.
Acting on your own behalf, esteem for esteemable acts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, wanting the best for you. What is the best for you? It's not what people are telling you. It's what deep down, what do you really know and want for you?
Exactly. And we get there through mindfulness, right?
Mm-hmm.
We get that through spending time in the silence and really listening to that inner voice. Many of us we're so deeply entrenched in our programming, we think that society says I'm supposed to be this, so I want that. We spend years chasing something, and then we either get it, and we think, oh, that's not it. Jim Carrey, he said, I wish everyone to be rich and famous so they recognize that's not it. Right? So we suffer if we get it and it didn't help or fix us.
Right.
Or we suffer when we believe that we need to get that and we don't ever attain it.
I'll be happy when.
I'll be happy when.
I'll be happy when. I remember saying, I'll be happy when I'm a size 0, and I was a size 0, and I was not happy.
Correct.
Yeah, I had moments of wow, and then it was not good. So absolutely, yeah. I had a guest, Janine Roth, who's best-selling author and Oprah's diet coach, who wrote this fabulous book, When You Eat at the Refrigerator, Pull Up a Chair. And she talks about the same concept. Like you don't, she's been on twice. She's brilliant. The same, I think she talks about 3 of the doors. But she's also written that book, Women Food God. I just remembered. So this is like the male food God, men food God right here. So that's great. That's great. So a little bit about your journey. We're going to get personal. So are you first? Do you always feel good? Do you always feel perfect, whole, and complete?
So I think it's a great question. And I will say on one level, yes, and on another level, no. And I'll explain more deeply. I think once I really discovered deeply the truth of who and what I was, there was a permanent shift. Now, what I was hoping that would be is that I'd never have an ego. I'd never have any more desire. I would always be in bliss.
Right.
Not been my experience. And I haven't, we hear stories about these great masters that have come that attain that. And I don't know any human being that I've met that's always there.
Yeah.
The difference, and I know you understand this, Marissa, the difference is when I really do know the truth of who and what I am, I can witness those other parts of myself. I can say, isn't that interesting that I'm having this perspective? I still move into like, why is this happening? Oh, wait, I catch myself.
Yeah, it's a quicker recovery. I have a friend who tells me all the time he's amazed at how quickly I can feel it and then release it.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the ticket. And that was the point I wanted to make, is that we're not here to be perfect, because that's another trap. That's another addiction. Perfectionism is an addiction and will keep us from that joy. So the key is to know and then let ourselves off the hook when we're human.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when we're having a human moment.
Yeah, and we hear that we're human beings having a spiritual, or spiritual beings having a human experience. Well, I've changed that.
Okay.
Here it is. We are spiritual beings having a spiritual experience. And the reason I say that is because my mind wants to say this is human and this is spiritual. What if it's all spiritual? What if even my ego was? The ego is a powerful tool that we can use to deliver spirit when we know the deepest truth of who I am. My friend Dr. Sue Morter says only ego would want ego to die. Spiritually, it's all useful. The ego then becomes a vehicle, which is what it's intended to do.
I'm so glad you just affirmed. I was just talking about this with my weekly call this morning with a friend of mine who, I fight against people who say, let's kill off the ego, or even in the prayer, you want to let go of your ego, or I say let go of your ego, the Lego. But I do believe, thank you for affirming that, I do believe that ego has a place. It allows me to step into situations where normally I'd feel very afraid of and run.
Exactly.
So
and the issue, though, for the ego is many of us believe that's who and what we are. That's the ego trap. We do want to release the trap of the ego. Like, we don't want to believe that I am this collection of beliefs or ideas about myself. The ego can be a vehicle, right? So in the awakened state, which any of us, awakening is one breath away, enlightenment is one breath away. We all came in as that. It's the deepest truth of who we are.
Yeah.
We return to that. And then when the ego, in its most purposeful way, it can deliver that, right? So if we're speakers, if we're authors, all of those are gifts of the ego.
yeah.
We say,
thank you.
Yeah.
I'll take that. All right.
You've got some great ego gifts. I love your gifts.
Oh,
Really, I
thank
mean
you.
that. You're delivering something really powerful into the world.
Thank
Our
you.
friend Oprah, if she didn't use that, look at the amount of change that she's brought about by
True.
using her talents.
Michael dubbed me the Asian Oprah.
I love that.
Yeah, he introduced me to Oprah as the Asian Oprah.
Beautiful.
And she didn't call her lawyer or anything. So that was good. She just complimented my pants, and it took every part of me not to say, "Do you want them?" and like pull them off for her. So that was my Oprah experience. But it's a beautiful moniker, and I'm very grateful for it. And I'm very grateful to have you here. My last question always for my guests is, who are you grateful to for where you are? And you can look in the camera and tell them.
I am most grateful to my first spiritual teacher, Mary Helen Brownell, who taught me a lot of the principles that I write about in Conscious Being and Conscious Recovery. I actually dedicate both those books to her. She made her transition from this plane in 1998, but the impact of her life, of her beingness, lives on through so many of us. And I've dedicated the rest of the time I'm here on the planet, whatever I'm gifted to have, to use her teachings in a way that can help shift consciousness on the planet to serve the new paradigm. So Mary Helen, I know you're here with me. I love you, and thank you for being such a catalyst for my own returning to the deepest truth of who I am.
Beautiful, beautiful. And thank you, 谢谢, for coming on and sharing your expertise. This is a great solution for anyone that's feeling addicted or knows anyone who is in that place. And it is time for the end of the show. Welcome to my balance bar, where I invite you to step up for a little more balance, starting with one of my favorite tools, the 21-day fast from Complaining with Dr. Marissa. If you have not signed up, just go to my website, 4balance.org, and as soon as you're registered, if you do complete 21 consecutive days, you get a prize. So just let me know. Only 3 women have actually completed it. Please do that. If you haven't gotten the app, you can actually have daily tips delivered to you through that app, as well as keep score on how many times you complain a day, obviously trying to minimize that. And let's see, I have also a ticket giveaway, free tickets to the Best of You Expo at the end of March. So the first person listening to this and can go to 4balance.org and sign my contact and say, free tickets to Best You Expo. We'll get those tickets, and I will be speaking there March 24th and 25th. It's at the Long Beach Convention Center, so you want to make sure that you are there. Also, make sure you get your tickets to the City Summit and City Gala. I'll be covering the red carpet again, where I got to talk to Halle Berry, John Travolta, and Quincy Jones last year. This year, it will be Ashton Kutcher, and it's all about bringing limelight, those with limelight, to shine their light on those areas and those beneficiaries of nonprofits that are bringing light into the world. Also, join me in Sedona if you want to learn some moving meditation, balanced Tai Chi Gong. Please do register online, drmarissa.tv under retreats in Sedona, and we'll be doing my 8th annual Balance in the Vortexes. If you've never been to Sedona, you will be amazed at how gorgeous it is there. Lots of energy there. If you'd like to work with me, if you're in San Francisco, you have to work definitely with my guest, TJ Woodward. But if you are here in Southern California by the beach and you'd like to come and discover who you really are with more hope and happiness, then please do sign up for a free discovery talk, a little chat with me from my website. There's a calendar there where you can select that. And that is it for today. Another fabulous episode of Hope and Happiness with Take My Advice. I'm Not Using It. Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa Pay. That's P for positive, EI. And remember, it's all about balance. Peace in and peace out.